This is the unfiltered truth about entrepreneurship. Raw, no BS, no sugarcoating. Welcome to Entrepreneur Intel. I'm your host, Wes Matthews. Each episode, we'll learn from experienced founders and uncover the top 5% learnings that led to their success in all things personal, family, and business. This show is sponsored by Stealth Consulting, delivering clear marketing strategies, ROI, and no surprises. Awesome. So super excited for today. Want to introduce Nathan Tyler. Nathan, thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, excited to be here.
A lot of things to talk to you about. So first, we've been trying to get this podcast going. Are you near the fires? What's going on there? Are you by there or?
I am in an area that I never thought would even remotely be threatened by fires. I'm several miles south of the foothills, but we actually did get an evacuation notice. They evacuated up to about a half a mile above us, and so we went ahead and went down south for a few days. Everything was fine. Like, we're really on the perimeter. I think it was precautionary, but we were without power here for like about a week, and
wow.
Then we came back. But yeah, all good.
What's crazy is like I'm 43, and I don't know. It seems like I was in Southern California for a short stint when I was 19 to 20, which was amazing. But it just seems pretty insane, just like the fires. And have you guys experienced that in your area? Is that just totally new or?
No, yeah. I mean, I grew up here, so I've always kind of every couple of years there's like a fire and there's tons of smoke and the air quality degrades, and some really nice houses in the foothills burn, but like 10 houses, right? And they evacuate and then it gets rebuilt. It's never really descended this far into the cities and really decimated entire areas. I've never seen anything like it. So,
jeez,
yeah,
crazy. Being in Michigan, like, it's just something we never think about, right?
Yeah,
at all.
Yeah. Well, we don't think much about tornadoes or hurricanes in other parts. Everybody's got their
their thing, right? Yeah. Ours is winter. I guess it's not as bad as a fire, but for 9 months it's extremely cold here. Still not as bad as a fire and what's going on out there. But thank you so much for coming on. So your background, right, as I want to talk about, I think it's really interesting is the word and term SaaS, right? And like your experience in the SaaS world. So can you just explain what that means to you for individuals that may think they know or they're hearing that term for the first time? I mean, unless you're living under a rock, you've had to have heard SaaS, but I think it's coming from you who's lived it, has the experience. I'd love to get your take on what it actually means.
Yeah, SaaS, I think, really popped up as a term for us older folks. I think if you were born in the last 20 years, like, everything is SaaS, so it just doesn't mean anything. But back in the day, they used to sell software in boxes, and you would go to the store to CompUSA or to one of these places that no longer exists, and you would buy the box of software and take it home. And you could buy like Microsoft Project for project management or something. And then one day, as the web was evolving, right, somebody had the bright idea that, I could sell this software in a web page where I go and log in and I could just sell monthly access to it. And so Basecamp was a project management software that was like one of the first big ones that really came out and started making a viable business model. Is, okay, you don't buy this project planning software in a box for $500 every couple of years. You instead pay me $50 a month, and then it's all online, and you log in. So that's, I think, software as a service. That's kind of how it originated, but now nothing gets bought by boxes, and kind of by definition, almost everything is a SaaS.
Yeah, I think I remember when I was like, I don't even know, maybe 20, maybe not, but like buying a big box of like QuickBooks from like Best Buy or something, and trying to load that baby on my gateway computer that was the size of my desk. And it never worked like properly. Like, you're always like crashing. And so you've been in this world. I mean, so you were sort of in this world when everything started to transition into this SaaS thing, right? Like, is it something that you saw coming down the pipeline, or was it just like an abrupt, here it is?
So, I mean, I think I started seeing it, but before I was really actively in the business world, I was seeing that start to play out while I was still in school. And right as I was graduating, like web was becoming a viable place to like do business and have these software packages. So yeah, you could kind of see it developing.
Because you like, how long you've been tooling around with websites and doing software? Like you've been doing that for quite a long time, right?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I was always tinkering around, even like through elementary and middle school, like tinkering around with stuff, but like desktop software. And really, the web software was evolving. And then when I was in college, I think Google Maps came out, like Google Maps, Gmail, kind of this explosion of what they called Web 2.0, which was like real dynamic applications in a web browser. That's when you could really start seeing the shift. Because actually, up until then, like when I was in high school, I was thinking, oh, like make desktop application software. And it was really in college, there was this huge shift. It was like, oh no, we're just gonna build in the web browser. And that became kind of the obvious transition.
So you started doing this, came out of college, and somehow, some way you landed on like creating a website agency, or is that sort of like your first thing after college, getting involved in web and software?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm only a few years younger than you. I'm 40. So I was graduating in high school in 2003 and then college in 2006. So it was right around that time I was actually working. I worked my last 2 years of high school, like at a computer store doing sales and support. And I was working with a lot of small businesses who were coming in and buying equipment. And I would kind of end up freelancing, or they would also need a website, or they would need some little custom software application. So I was doing that part-time through all of college. And then when I graduated, 2006 was not exactly a great economy anyway. So I thought, well, I'll just keep doing this and go up to full-time, because by my end of college, I was already working like 20, 25 hours a week. And then I just ramped it up to full-time, just getting whatever website project I could. And at the time, there was no Squarespace drag and drop. Like people who just even had a corner coffee shop and needed a website needed somebody to do it for them. So that was kind of how I started getting into the web.
So it's crazy because I think we kind of both started around the same time. And yeah, back in the day that you had like platforms like Joomla. I mean, WordPress really wasn't even talked about. Yeah. And Joomla, even for me, like, and I'm not a techie guy, but it was really difficult to navigate around. But now, right, like it's crazy to think in 10 years, like the quality of a website that you can build in like these self-serving DIY. Because I think for me, there's this intimidation factor around the DIY. Mm-hmm. But there's these platforms and SaaS platforms out there that'll build you a phenomenal website.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, the line has really moved. Like something that we used to charge a few $1,000s for, you could now get for like a $9 sign up fee with a 30-day trial. Like, and you can get up and running in an hour yourself.
With like zero experience, right? Like,
zero experience. Anybody can do it.
I used to joke way back in the day, like when I was like full blown into my agency, talking to prospective customers, and I'd say, you don't want your sister's, cousin's, brother's, nephew's, neighbor, right, managing your website, because you're a real company. And they'd get that. They'd start to laugh and they'd be like, yeah, I totally get that. We're a real company. We should, move into a professionally company for like you guys to manage. Well, the problem is that same person today is kind of the person you want managing your website, because they can do a really good job.
Yeah.
It's like it's completely shifted upside down.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you have things like Canva. I mean, it's just crazy which I want to get into with you and kind of pick your brain there. But so you got into the world around like 2014, and then what did you grow that company, sell it, or?
So my agency, I would have started, I think I took my first contract thing in 2004, 2005. And then I ran it. It started as just me. And then I kind of built a small agency out of that. Did a lot of websites and heavy data and web application projects, a lot of custom business applications. So we got really into the kind of back end side of it and really like helping automate and improve the workflows of different companies. So that was kind of our focus. But as the years went on, like running an agency is a really tough business, because there's always like not enough work or not enough people to do the work. The balance is never right. Even from month to month, it kind of goes through peaks and valleys. And it's really hard to get clean systems in place internally because every client's like a little bit different and every project might be a different technology stack or something. And I feel like I'd finally gotten to a point where I really had a good system, and I had people would give me Photoshop files and we'd slice it up into a website, and we had this whole process. And I was like, I've cracked it. Like I finally have this agency that does what I needed to do. And then the iPhone came out, and all of a sudden that Photoshop process was completely broken. Now we have responsive design. It has to work on a tablet and a desktop and a mobile, and all the people and processes I had completely useless now. Like now we need to have design in the browser, and you need to have a developer and designer in one who can do that. Totally different client process. And kind of that was the moment for me around, I guess, 2007 or 8, when it was like the iPhone is clearly going to become a thing, where I decided, okay, like I need to get out of this client services endless loop, because I'm not actually getting anywhere. So, and that was a slow transition. So I started dipping my toe into software, not by building a full-on SaaS, but by building some WordPress plugins. So building, a little small plugin within an ecosystem. I didn't have to build as much to get started. Had some traction with some of those, and then eventually started building a SaaS company that I exited in 2019, and that was really kind of the final end of my client services agency days, and shift full time into product and software.
It's interesting. It's kind of like, it gives me chills to think about at one point, like as hearing you talk, I just remember at one point, like we had the desktop version and the mobile version. Like at one point and there was actually companies out there that, there's people out there that we would talk to and like, you don't have a mobile version of your website. Like that was a thing. Now it's like, you wouldn't even think twice about like, that wouldn't even enter a conversation. Like you and I kind of have some similar stories. Like I got out of the agency world, and my crystal ball that normally fails me was like, man, what's coming down the pipeline in digital marketing is this going to completely disrupt. So like, is that, so you talk about like getting out of client services, right? Because that's a different beast. That's its own animal. So now on the SaaS world and these WordPress plugins and kind of what you're doing from a SaaS, is that more than targeted, on the B2B of like the agencies who are then serving that to their client? Like, is that what you just want to build the best software and support that?
Yeah. So, I think the common thread, I've done a lot of different projects and stuff. The common thread is really building really good software that has a real focus on user experience. Because I think there's a lot of, enterprise, big company software, and then there's lots of small kind of indie projects, but typically it's like the developer just enjoys the developer, and they're kind of like an artist in that way, that they just love the chase of the problem, but there's no focus on how the actual user experiences the software. So we've always had a deep focus on like trying to really tackle complex, difficult problems, but really make it exceptionally easy to use. And for, a small business, they have a million things going on. They really don't want to interact with your software, right? Like it's just one moment in their day. And so you really want to remove as much friction and frustration as possible and help them become successful. And a big part of that is also customer support. Famously, a lot of software companies will outsource their support, or that's just a very secondary thought. But we've also always really hired aggressively for the best customer support we can provide. And in many cases, in the early days, we've done it ourselves. Our customer support team will like jump on Zoom calls with customers. They'll write, snippets of code, whatever it takes for the customer to actually be successful. So those are really the pillars of our software side. And, I did enjoy a lot of the agency work we did, and we did a lot of really complex setups for customers. But, I think we're primarily like a product and a software company, and that my background and my interest has always been there. And agency was a vehicle for that. But what I discovered was a lot of agency work was, helping people write their content, help them figure out the photos, project management, navigating the organization of that client, dealing with the politics of the two co-founders that are my client, trying to figure out how to help them become successful. A lot less, the software was like this much of the project, and then there was everything else. And so I think in this model and going into SaaS, like we really can focus on building a like very good and scalable product. Right now we have 100,000 users across all of our product base, right? They're all paying us a little bit of money. So the business model is completely flipped from agency, but I think it's a better fit for my interest, experience, and tolerance for certain things.
Yeah, it's interesting. So like my partner in my business now, he's been my partner for a long time, but he was the CTO, the software developer, and we used to laugh and joke. I mean, he's like, building the software is easy. Like that's the easy part. It's like when stuff breaks or the troubleshooting. I mean, because the clients are trying to navigate through your software and they're pressing the wrong buttons, doing the wrong things. Nothing's broken. It's just the user. And he used to get so frustrated. I mean, we actually got out of that business because we were like on the opposite side. Because I'm like, you can build really cool tech, but we have to support it. Yeah. Like that's a big thing. Like you can't just build software and leave people out to dry. Like you have to support it and take the feedback and get better. So, we kind of got out of that world. So like how then, you talk about an emphasis on like customer support and, because usually in the SaaS model, this is my take and maybe other people's take, it takes a lot of money to create that thing. But then on a SaaS platform, you're licensing a little bit of that, right? So they're able to pay $50 a month, $20 a month. But if they were to go out and buy that software and build it internally, you're talking hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, right? Like to me, that's the concept. Yeah. Now you talk about customer service, like how do you differentiate yourself or like really build that relationship with your client? Because everything is just getting cheaper and there's all these widgets and there's so much noise out there, right? I mean, I'll start with that question. I got a good follow-up because I want to start to talk a little bit about some of the things I use and maybe pick your brain on some of the things that you're like, hey, for $10 a month, this thing completely changed my life. But how do you differentiate, or is that the differentiator that you actually deliver a high level of customer service?
Yeah, I think that is the differentiator. I think partially, so we started in WordPress world, everything's kind of freemium. There's a free version and 90% of your users are free, and then some portion upgrade to pro. So you literally can't afford to like have support be an issue. So I think it starts with the user experience and trying to plug all of those holes and every kind of assumption or you watch people go through your software and like they click the wrong thing. Well, then you need to change the thing or make it so they can't click that or like, reduce elements. I think a lot of it is this kind of cycle of like, oh, we're seeing this in support. Like, how can we put this into the product so that it never happens in the first place? So there's a lot of emphasis on that software itself, but then also digging in on customer support and like, don't just send them the canned reply. Don't let AI just take over and copy paste your response. Like actually try to solve the person's problem. And that takes the right kind of person, which is you have to hire pretty specifically for that. And you have to go through a lot. There's a lot of people, like a lot of standard customer service jobs. Like if somebody has done help desk ticket based software, those typically are not the people that actually end up working out with us as support. People who've done phone support or people in unrelated industries, but if they're really focused on people and solving a problem, then they're the right fit. So I think that's really, it's not easy, I guess, but it is a differentiator. And people, like there are comments in our reviews and stuff saying best support I've received from any company ever in my life, right? Like there's people who put that in in their reviews of our software, and it is a huge differentiator. And the bar is not even very high. Like if you even just respond to an email in a way that you show that you've read their email and you respond the same day, like that alone puts you in like the top 10%. So I think it's a differentiator, but sadly it's not very hard to be different in that way. And that's kind of how we started out. I think it really fueled a lot of our early growth.
So I think the best SaaS thing I pay for, if I had to think, one that changed my life is Calendly. Yeah. Right. So for me, I don't know if you don't know what Calendly is, like it's a simple link that'll book on your calendar. And it just eliminated so much back and forth, right? You're emailing somebody, oh, when can you meet? Oh, that time doesn't work. 2 days later, like put your link out there. But I also think that there's a challenge because it's a little informal. So I don't use it all the time, right? But so like to me, that's a SaaS product. I don't even know what I pay, 10, 15 bucks a month. I'm sure they've invested millions in that tech. But like, and I don't even know how I heard of it or how maybe I found it, somebody else used it many, many years ago. Or like a Zoom, right? I think I pay $150 a month per license, my team. But the way we conduct business and what Zoom does, I mean, if they charged me 10 grand a month, I would have to pay it. Like it's that inclusive of our business. But for you, I know you're working on, I don't know if BlinkMetrics is like the baby or the one that's kind of your lead off. But I want to talk a little bit about that because I think it's great because I think as an entrepreneur, you know, as a leader of a company, like you just want the data and you want the metrics, and there's a lot of noise. And I know often myself with my own teams, I'm like, they're talking about something or making a decision. And I'm like, give me the data, like show me. And then people say, well, this or that. I'm like, I trust you, but I want to verify it. Give me the data, right?
Yeah.
But there's so many moving parts, whether it's like pay per click or this or that. There's so much noise for me to sit down and gather all the data. Like I can't even do it. So talk a little bit about like BlinkMetrics and, you know, how you thought of it, right? Because I think it was a problem you had and you just said, I'm going to solve it. So we'd love to learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So we've had a number of these different software products, and we're doing some professional services. We have multiple lines of business. So this company is 10 years old. There's been multiple products, the WordPress plugins and things that we built along the way. And after the acquisition and after my SaaS acquisition, me switching fully into this company, N Squared, which is all the products are under, we really kind of had the challenge of like, how do we keep on top of all things? Because we have the small business problem of, like you said, everything going on, you know, ad spend and Google Analytics and my CRM and our help desk software. Are people responding quickly enough? Like all the departments of the business, each of them have tools, each of them have reports. For me to look at one business and figure out how it's really going, like you can't even do it. You'd have to open like 20 or 30 tabs and kind of spend 5 minutes in each one. And that's only one line of business for us. So we had that multiplied. Or if you're an agency doing this for clients, you have it multiplied times your entire client portfolio. And there really was not a good way. And we did adopt some systems. We adopted EOS internally. We set up a scorecard for each one, which was a great process for us to go through. It was like, what numbers matter? Like what are the 3 numbers we need to know from customer support? What are the 3 numbers we need to know from marketing? The 3 numbers from sales, the 3 numbers from development. So that was kind of that's a soft skill to kind of figure out exactly what the right numbers are. But then how do we measure them, right? And most people, ourselves included, was like, we're going to fire up a Google sheet. And then like once a week, I'm going to copy paste, you know, this number from Google Analytics and this number from Calendly, how many bookings did I have? And this number from, you know, my CRM, how many deals do we have? And this number from help desk, what was our response time? Like all of these numbers times multiple product lines. And so the first version of BlinkMetrics was internally, okay, this is ridiculous. Like we're going to, like, let's at least automate the copy paste. Like we'll use the API. We'll, you know, write a little code. It'll go grab the number, copy paste it into Google Sheets. And then, you know, I have a bit of a data science background, and a lot of the projects we've done have been like business intelligence, big data projects in my agency days. And said, okay, well, how can we actually do this properly? So we'll store all the data granularly so we can report on it any way we want. And then we can still paste it into Google Sheets. So for like the first 6 months, BlinkMetrics was literally like us just logging into Google Sheets, but not doing the manual entry. And then we started building the interface and tools around this that we'd always wanted, which is like which numbers are on track, which numbers are off track. How do we know if, what should I look at? Basically, where should I focus my attention? Get all the data, that just the raw collection is a saving of time, but then also help me, you know, color code it, green, red. What do I need to look at? And then when I want to look at it, jump directly back into the source where that data came from so that I can quickly like act on it or do further investigation. That was really how it all started.
So for those, you know, that aren't familiar, EOS is the entrepreneur operating system. That it's like a simple methodology on how to successfully run an entrepreneurial focused company. So out of that, right? So there's a lot with EOS, right? But a big part of it's setting KPIs, key performance indicators, goals, rocks, all these different things. So like, and I do feel like in EOS, or sometimes people have a hard time, like, what is a good KPI? Like, I have no idea. Like, is that something that you guys help the company with, or do they need to have that stuff figured out before they embark with you?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a journey for each company to kind of go through that. And we can help a little bit. Like, I think oftentimes they already have a scorecard. It's very clean because basically like, okay, well, we can automate all of that. And you can have a company scorecard and one for each department. And we just take away all of that kind of pain. They already know what they want to do. Some people are a little bit earlier in that journey. And so we have some templates and some suggestions like, oh, you've not really done a scorecard for customer support before, like, here's a great one and it already integrates with your tool. And we can do a little bit of that education. But there are people whose entire job is to like go into companies and implement these improvements and coach the leaders and all of that. Like, we're a product and a software company. So I think us making an introduction to somebody who can really help with that and with the organization specific things is often a better fit, like if they need a lot of hands-on time.
So I want to ask a question because I think it's important, because like, what's a typical, like in the SaaS world, like what you deliver, is it like a per license fee? Is that what you refer to it as? Like, what's a typical fee for this solution?
Sure. So it would be like, so we have a workspace, which would be like for a company, for them to connect all their data, right? And that's going to be like $1,000 a month down to even like $200 a month. You have a few scorecards, and a lot of people will start at that basic point. So they might already have a scorecard, or we can help guide them a little bit on templates to start with, and say, here, you can know everything that's going on with your business and like where to focus your attention, all in one spot across the 50 SaaS tools. Your Calendly subscription, all your different subscriptions that you use to run your business. You can actually get the data out of them. There's a sea of data in those tools that nobody has time to look at or like parse together, and you'll actually be able to harness all of that.
So is the true value then, is it more of, hey, you're paying for a tool that's going to just save you time and efficiency, or like what? Like, I know it's a lot. It can mean a lot of different things for different people, but like from a pure SaaS, is it like it's a time saver?
I think it's more. I think there's a lot more growth and opportunity that are left on the table by not looking at this data. Like, yeah, it can save some time, but like you can hire somebody to copy paste some numbers for you. And sure, if you have a ton of numbers, there is some cost and time savings, but really just practically a lot of this stuff just doesn't get done, right? It's not staffed or it's cost prohibitive if you do it at a tremendous scale. So people just kind of stop at like, okay, well, I only need to know these 5 numbers, but it doesn't really cost anything additional to pull all of this data at once, and it can happen real time. Like, I can open it up today and see the status of everything rather than waiting for the end of the quarter for, somebody to go pull it all together. You can catch those problems earlier, right? Like, I can see the traffic to my website, it's just humming along at green, like where it is, but then all of a sudden it goes to red. Like, I find out about that, 4 days after it happens, that like last week our traffic was a third of what it's been every other week. And then I can jump in and say, oh, these ads turned off, or, oh, our best partner pulled down our landing page. And so you can actually solve those problems and act on them much quicker. I think that's actually the real value and opportunity, more than the time and cost savings, is being able to really be on top of your business and know what's going on. And even so, growth externally, and also just execution and accountability internally. I think it's helpful. That's often an even bigger gap, right? Like, most people don't have really good data on anything, let alone like their team and how their team is performing and how this individual is performing and doing their job, which is good from a accountability standpoint, and also just for a career growth standpoint. A lot of small businesses are really bad at providing career paths for people because there's just so much chaos going on. But if you can say like, hey, like, here's where you are, and by this time next year, we'd love for it to be here. We're not going to live and die by these numbers. We're not trying to grind you, but just like, if we look at this quarter over quarter, you should be answering more support tickets faster, harder support tickets. Your volume should be going up. Your response time should be going down. And we can actually automatically collect all of that and show it very cleanly and give somebody a career path without the administrative nightmare, right? Like of doing it manually.
Yeah, no, I laugh because I know where you're at. I mean, and numbers don't lie, people do, right? In my experience. And also, who hasn't had the horror story about somebody who's responsible for cutting and pasting and it's the wrong data or the
that only has to happen like twice, and then you don't trust any of it at all, which defeats the entire.
Like I'm getting PTSD right now just because I recall of just wrong data. I've had people paid for payroll that were no longer with the company. This is like many years ago, but just anything I can put into a system. And the reason why I asked about that is because, kind of mentioning earlier, like when you're paying for a SaaS product, like paying you guys a couple hundred or $1,000 a month, I mean, you're basically paying a really small fraction of like your guys' capital investment and time and expertise.
Yeah.
And
we've got like 30, 40,000 hours into this. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, you're getting a very small fraction.
And like 15 years ago, right? Like we're talking about web and going back, there's companies that I would come up against and they're like building dashboards for entrepreneurial companies and they're charging hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I remember these projects like never ending, never like they would just be huge messes. But I want to ask you, because you come from the world that I come from, which is, do you find though, like what you guys are offering, right, for a couple $100, 500, call it 1,000, doesn't really matter. But like the way people view it and the objections they come up with on why they shouldn't do it, or I've seen people spend like 50 grand on a billboard that got nothing. Yeah. And then you present them with something like a BlinkMetrics that could potentially change their company and make it a huge success, and they will like fight you tooth and nail and be like, I don't see the value of this $200 a month or $500 a month. Like it's like a Twilight Zone. It's mind boggling to me.
Yeah. Some people definitely have different mental budgets of like, software, I will only spend this much on software, but I'll spend $10,000 for a weekend like self-improvement course about how to like grow my business. It's like, well, this is the best way to grow your business, is like you can see every piece of data about your business and where you should be focusing your attention for maximum growth and impact. And so I think there's sometimes a disconnect there. If people can make that leap, or if they're in that growth mode, like they get it, right? Like it's not really just the time savings, because that's a very like logical mindset, and you start, moving the little mental accounting. Mm-hmm. But if you think about, what's one mistake that my business had last year that I found out about 5 months late, if you could have known about that the moment that it happened, like it would pay for itself 10 times over. And even the thing that you were saying, like somebody puts in the wrong number, or like, even if you're doing some of this, but you don't truly trust the data, then you're not really going to use it. You have this internal mental resistance. And so that is really one of the values, is like, if I can trust everything in here. And if I don't, I can click any number and I can see exactly where it came from and I can confirm it instantly. Like, then you can actually really start acting on this data.
That's what I always try to share with anybody that'll listen, like from an entrepreneurial perspective, like what are the 3 to 5 numbers that if we're on an island and you're having a margarita that you care about, right? And like use simple logic of like green, yellow, red. I mean, if the number's green, you probably shouldn't care, right? If it's yellow, you can dig in as an entrepreneurial leader and kind of figure out. If it's red, you probably missed the boat. But like come up with those 3 to 5 numbers and then figure out, what those are feeding into. I'm just shocked that so many entrepreneurial companies just they don't do anything here. And they'll go to a Tony Robbins thing or insert any type of trade show and spend thousands at the bar, thousands on that. Yet throw up a bunch of egg on. $250 a month just doesn't really make sense for our budget right now. It's like, what? You can't afford not to do this.
Yeah. And I think some of that also comes down to that soft skill too of selecting the numbers, because I think if people haven't thought much about it, they're like, dashboard data should be like my revenue. And it's like, well, no, that's like that's the final result. Like the game's already over by the time you see what the revenue number is. Like you should be focusing on steps ahead of that, the leading indicators of like, well, not how many dollars do we get, but then how many opportunities and people do we have in our sales pipeline? How many intro calls did we book? How many visitors came to my website? How many people filled out that form? Right? Those are the numbers that you can act on, because I think if you look at a number in there and the number's red, like the revenue number is red, if your response is, well, that's too bad, like, then it doesn't really belong there. And that's
Right.
also some of the battle, the internal kind of resistance that we get from people is like, well, I don't really need this report. And it's because you're not actually looking at the numbers that drive the business. You're looking at the result, which I agree. Like, if you're gonna do that, just go check your bank account once a month and like see if it's going up or down. But if you actually want to improve your business, you need to kind of look at those leading indicators and then watch them like very closely. And you do want to be like, if there's a number that goes red, you should have an action that you take from that. And if you don't, you should take it off the list.
Yeah, it's like, what's the emergency route to get out of this situation, right? Like when that alarm goes off. Now, what are your thoughts on like, what are you guys doing? Like, what's all the rage right now? AI, still we're in the infancy stages of what that is, and all the stuff coming out from China and cryptocurrency. Like, do you have like a 2014 moment now where you see this big like change coming in terms of what's next?
Yeah, I think what AI can do is really powerful. I think the kind of consumer use case of like ChatGPT is like, it's a jack of all trades. It's not terribly good at anything. Everybody's typed something in and it gives back kind of nonsensical responses. AI, I think, is really powerful in very narrow use cases with a lot of context given. And that's really where I think it's going to emerge as transformational in our lives, right? Like, it can analyze an X-ray, right, in a nanosecond, and can do just as good as like X-ray text, because it has, they have 500,000 other ones that they're comparing it against, right? So in a very narrow use case, it's good. I think we've seen kind of the first wave of AI startups, which is basically like a startup that calls the ChatGPT API in the background and then feeds it back. I don't think AI itself is the product. I think AI will be like killer features within another product. So like in our world, we don't have any AI in the product at all. I think eventually, like, what we're building is the perfect foundation for AI to bolt onto, and we do have customers that are using it that way. We enable it, but we don't have it in the core platform at this point. But basically, we can ingest all of the data from your business. So imagine every visitor to your website, every lead form that's ever been submitted, every support ticket you've ever received, every response that your team has given, all of that data, all your documentation, all of that can be sucked into one data warehouse, and then AI can come on. And now it's not just ChatGPT, but it's an AI that knows every single thing about you, Wes, and everything about your customers and everything that you've ever sent to them, and what their account looks like and how much money they've spent with you and if they've paid on time. And like, now you could ask it a question or have it work in a really narrow use case, say like, take every email this person's ever sent me, use their tone of voice, and like, help me craft this thing. AI will be transformational in that way. And so what we see ourselves as is the helping curate and collate the data in such a way that you can use AI in an actually effective, deep way, and not kind of just a general purpose, use case.
Yeah, what you just explained, I'll buy that. So when that's ready, I'll pay a monthly fee and I'll subscribe to that, because I do use ChatGPT, right? And it does. Yeah. I think I've gotten a little better in terms of like my persona and all these different things, but to me, I kind of use it as like it's training wheels. It's kind of a way to kind of it's an idea generator.
Yeah. It's a really good first draft. Like, it's a really good hardworking intern who's just like, ready to go, and like, and it can be used in a lot of good cases, but you've probably experienced the best way to use it is to give it a bunch of context and feed it an example. And like, you're doing that manually. And a lot of times I do that. Like, I'll do a paragraph of stuff, and then you can kind of channel it to give you the good thing that you want.
Yeah, I find myself like getting mad at it and like saying, "No, you're not listening." Sorry, Yeah. But it does make me, as like a visionary entrepreneur, like flush out my thoughts, get some ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I mean, I think that's coming, right? Like, how do you take the metrics of your company and then, like, say you run into a sales challenge, right? Like, here's the metrics I'm tracking. How do I get better in this lever, right? How do I pull these levers properly where then I can give you that, to get from red to yellow or green, or those predictive, or I'm sorry, the pre things that you could implement before you get to that point. I mean, there's some fun stuff that you could really do.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So what's next? I mean, is BlinkMetrics like the core focus of your time, or any other cool SaaS products you guys have coming up? Or
no, that's really the core focus. I mean, I think it's a much more ambitious project, right? So like we will be working on this for years and years. Like there's so many directions that we can continue to go with it. Like I think step one is really just get all the data in there, which we're kind of finishing, and now it's more analysis. Like we're working on how can you see these in the scorecard, see these in different report views, like all the different ways that you can get this data out so it's actionable and relevant to your business, and so you can slice and filter it in whatever way so you know what is going on with your business and how you can act. And then AI and like really deep insights will be kind of the next phase beyond that. But we'll be working, this is the core focus, and kind of what my whole career has been triangulating towards, I think. So I'm excited.
Yeah, so I would say that if you're listening and you are on EOS, this is a really effective solution to roll your data into. People that are on EOS just get it, and they know how hard it is to manage and keep track of all this. In my world, I always ask people, and I'll say, what's your lead acquisition cost, right? And they're like, I don't even know what that means. And I'll say, well, how much does it cost for you to acquire a client, like leads and opportunities? And they have no idea.
Yeah.
And to me, like there's simple metrics that you should just have on hand as a business owner if you want to grow, or so for me, so how do people, I think we work with you guys do some great stuff. Your customer service is super patient, and you guys really do help lead the client through this process. So it's not like a super intimidating process, but if somebody's interested, right, they need to clean up their data. They know they need to do something. And if you're on EOS, have the phone call, have the discussion, because it'll just flow so well. Your EOS implementer will praise you. Your team will love you for it. But how do people like connect with you guys, or like what's the first thing that somebody should do if they're interested?
Sure. Yeah, if you go to BlinkMetrics.com, you can just say book your demo. It's up in the corner, and you can grab some time with me. I would say if this is interesting at all, definitely grab the time. I think the other hurdle people have mentally is just like, I don't need a data product, like I'm too small of a business. And I think because traditionally this kind of data and insight has always been available. If you have a business intelligence staff and you have 1,000 employees, like these problems get solved. But we really are trying to solve it. Like most of our customers have like 5 to 50 employees. Like it's a very small. We have solopreneurs that are just like really focused on growing their business. But if you have less than 50 or even 100 employees, you don't have a data team. You don't have any of this. And maybe you don't even think of it as data, but you have data everywhere. Like you have data in your Calendly account, in your Google Analytics account, in your CRM, in your help desk. And, if you're using one of the standard software packages that everybody uses to run their business, we can bring things out of there. So yeah, I love to talk about this stuff all day, even if it's just like helping you think a little bit better about what you should measure. Happy to chat about data all day, any day.
Well, I think as an entrepreneur, right? Like many entrepreneurs wear many hats, and you could spend your days or weeks just like aimlessly on a lot of different things. And I think focusing on specific KPIs, and I think what you focus on is what you start to move the needle on. And simple analogy I have is like many, many years ago, I bought a Jeep Wrangler, and I'll never forget when I drove that thing home from the dealership. I couldn't believe how many Jeep Wranglers I saw on the way home. And I had never paid attention or seen a Jeep Wrangler a day in my life. And I share that because it's like, once you like get that number in your focus, or like what you're focused on as an entrepreneur, like things start to solve themselves, and you start to like move the needle, because once you once you see some of the problems and the data points, you can't unsee that.
Yeah.
And now you can kind of help prioritize your focus as an entrepreneur. And maybe these other things aren't as important, right? And you'd even know, to your point, like there was a heavy leak over here and you didn't even realize it. So you're trying to pour money in the organization here, but it's going out the back door through something that you never even knew existed, you know?
Yeah. And as business owners, we really are like, we latch on to everything, right? Like we've got signals everywhere. We're chasing, we don't know what we're focused on. And at least for myself, I was bad at letting certain parts of the business go, right? Like when I was letting go of customer support, and that just frustrates your team, you know, like people who are working for you are just like feel micromanaged. And so that was also a great channel for me, was like, okay, how can I let go and just enough, but still know that it's going well and know what's going on? And if you can have that data and you can see, you know, customer satisfaction and response time and like whatever numbers matter to you, you can step back and help your team be more successful, and the business will be more successful, and your team will be happier that you're out of their way, and they can develop more. So I think there's also that angle of it, is it's a huge multiplier for the business in all of those ways.
No, that's great. No, that's really cool. So Nathan, once again, people can go to BlinkMetrics.com.
Yeah.
And then can they email you, find you on LinkedIn? Nathan Tyler, as it sounds?
Yeah. Nathan Tyler on LinkedIn, and BlinkMetrics.com. Just go to book your demo and we'll grab. We don't even have to demo. Okay. That really just means like, let's talk about your business and see what we could do. And then
I love it. I think you're a great dude. You have a great team. So if you're an entrepreneur, I would take that. I would take you up on that offer, because I think you'll definitely learn something. So Nathan, appreciate the time. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you, Wes.
This has been another episode of Entrepreneur Intel. Thank you for joining us. For show notes or other episodes, please visit us at entrepreneurintel.com. Until next time.